If this game is for you, you do not want to be one of the people currently missing out on it. So to find out if it is, let's take a look at Fallen Leaf, one of the most underrated games on Steam. Fallen Leaf takes a formula you've already seen 1,000 times and adds something that I'm not sure I've ever seen another game like this do, certainly not to this degree at least. But it'll be hard to explain just how impactful that addition is without a bit of context, so let's start with the personality. Writing generally doesn't matter in games like this, but there was just something about the world of Fallen Leaf that forced me to pay attention to nearly every word on the screen. And I'm not talking about the story alone, I really do mean every word, from side quests to NPCs to even item descriptions. There's just this vibrant and colorful feeling that sneaks its way into every corner of the game. So at the end of most stages you'll find a treasure chest, in which lies a variety of different items, such as a genie's lamp with no genie, a half-eaten scone, and a man. These may seem useless at a glance, and that's because a lot of them are. Despite the often goofy descriptions, it's no surprise that a fake plastic coin wouldn't be particularly useful to anybody. Where things change though is when you find the right people. You see, one of the best parts of this game is that NPCs actually have a purpose. They're not just there to go, hey look, my platformer has NPCs in it. No, they genuinely make the world feel more alive. Not only will they give you more information and hints about upcoming stages and bosses, but they're also written in such a way that you don't want to miss a lot of this dialogue. I mean, there's this streamer room where you've got this guy getting mad at his chat while playing not Pokemon, claiming that some of them don't even think before they type. There's a guy literally named Chad purchasing a very unique game, and even a skateboarder who's been balancing on this rooftop for 3 days? I think you get the idea. This is taken a step further in the side quest system, where certain NPCs require certain items that you'll find in chests. Remember the whole finding the right people? If you speak to enough people, you'll eventually find that a lot of them have their fair share of problems. These problems can often be solved by giving them the right items. The nice part about these side quests is that they really can be set to the side and completed in the background. Remember, all you need to complete these side quests are the items that you obtain at the end of most stages. You just enter a new area, talk to some people, find that one of them needs a video camera, and then give it to them after you get one at the end of a stage. You very rarely have to go out of your way to finish any of these. However, it's not just the dialogue. The attention to detail here is especially outstanding as well. Let me give you an example. So there's this angel who doesn't trust mortals. She claims that it's hard to do so after what happened last time. This empty wall next to her used to have a clock on it until a thieving mortal stole it. Eventually you're able to find the clock, and it's not just in some random chest at the end of a cave, but in a massive treehouse that's home to dozens of bandits, because of course it would be here. I mean, she did say it was stolen after all. My personal favorite example of both the attention to detail and just general personality of this game lies hidden away in one of the last stages of the first world. You see, if you make your way to this door, you'll find some of these little goofballs playing Not Galaga, and they're even nice enough to give you a chance to play yourself. If you beat their record, they'll give you this figure that came with the game based on the main character and captain of the ship. You can even look at this in your inventory if you check. Where this gets really cool is when you run into an NPC under certain circumstances that I don't want to specify due to spoilers, and you find that he's actually wearing the exact same outfit. I even remember going into my inventory to check after thinking, wait, I swear I've seen that before. The reason this is so meaningful is because it serves as a direct and concrete example that the things in this world are not just isolated to the areas in which they exist. It's like when you play Final Fantasy VII, see Tifa, and then go to PAX and see dozens of Tifas all over the place. Tifa isn't just a character in the game, she's an idea in the world that we live in. That's what makes the world of Fallen Leaf feel so much more alive and real. All of these characters, events, and ideas exist not as isolated moments in a video game, but as authentic parts of a single cohesive world. This is still a video game though, and to me the most important part of a game is, naturally, the gameplay. High quality gameplay is extremely important in games like this, due in part to the fact that they're very challenging. I mean, seriously, it didn't take me long to figure out why they call this game Fallen Leaf. Please don't leave. Challenge is a very integral part of games like this, and it's handled fairly well here. The first big thing that stood out to me was the punishment for death. See, in most games you'll get a game over screen or a lengthy animation to really hammer home the fact that you died, as if you weren't there to see it happen in real time. These can be particularly annoying in more challenging games where death is only ever a few mistakes away. Fallen Leaf, on the other hand, makes death far less tedious by doing a few things. First, it removes the game over screen and live system entirely. This exists solely to save your time. Second, to make things even more smooth, upon death you're returned return to the start of the section that you were at instead of the start of the stage. Another wonderful bit of quality of life is that the music doesn't even cut off when you die, so now you don't have to farm for lives, repeat entire stages because you made one stupid mistake at the very end, and when you do make that stupid mistake, instead of the game making some huge spectacle out of it, it just picks you up and tells you to try again. However, what really surprised me is how the game goes about preventing death in spite of its seemingly unfair difficulty. It does this in two ways. I'll start by showing you a quick sequence from a stage. See if you can notice the trend here. So we begin by shooting this skeleton monster. It dies in one hit but explodes into bones that'll deal damage if they hit us. We then jump onto a platform and are immediately confronted by a spider dropping down from the trees right in front of us. After taking care of that, we hop onto the next platform, which promptly plummets into the crimson waters below. Take out a few more enemies, and this time, instead of descending on us from above, a fish pops out from below the surface of the water. Now, if you don't instantly see the trend here, it's actually a bit more simple than it may seem. I like to call these gotcha moments, and there are a lot of them in this game. Moments where if you're not paying attention and just sprinting forward without a care in the world, you'll get punished for it. This is primarily done with enemies that appear out of nowhere or fallen platforms that'll drop you into the abyss if you're not quick and decisive with your jumps. This is why I call the difficulty seemingly unfair, because at a glance, a lot of these hazards feel a bit underhanded. But the key word here is seemingly, since while it may feel unfair on the surface, when you actually play the game, you quickly find yourself adapting to these scenarios and attaining this flow state that really is reminiscent of the older Megaman games. It's here that the game utilizes its first major tool to prevent death. This is something that, if you've played your fair share of great platformers, you'll recognize pretty quickly. Let's look at one of my favorite stages in the game and see how it accomplishes this. So we start with this surfboard. It takes you a certain distance and then it drops. That's all it does. We're introduced to this idea in a relatively safe environment, which gives us time to learn and understand this mechanic before we have to use it in a much more demanding section. Naturally, this progresses as the stage goes on. From jumping between surfboards to sections with these fireworks that emerge below you, you gradually get used to how this mechanic works, learning how to evade and even fight in these conditions. It's thanks to this that the game is later able to introduce enemies and hazards all while asking you to balance on this board, and in doing so, it creates these brilliant sequences where you're fully locked in and focused on the task at hand. It really is an incredible feeling, and it's a large reason why I love games like this so much. This alone, however, wouldn't be quite enough to fully prevent these seemingly unfair deaths. To do that, the game utilizes a much more simple tool: speed. Not necessarily movement speed, but attack speed and snappiness. You've likely already noticed this from watching the footage, but movement in this game is extremely precise. Equally, attacks come out more than fast enough for you to react in true Wild West fashion, blasting your enemies the instant they appear. Thanks to these design choices, you not only have the knowledge required to face your opposition, but the tools needed to defeat them. Unfortunately though, this just isn't enough. A game needs more than a quirky personality and good game design to be great. In fact, you could even argue that's just the bare minimum. Believe it or not though, I'm pretty sure the developers knew that. They knew that just having this extraordinarily detailed world, outstanding music, and well-designed mechanics just wouldn't be enough, and that's where their ace in the hole comes in, their trump card: the character and weapon switching mechanics. If you've been watching this video and not just playing it in the background while doing something else, then you likely would have noticed the subscribe button just below it. However, you also would have noticed that I'm not always using the same character in the footage. This is because not only are there just under a dozen different characters in this game, but you can switch between them whenever you like, even in the overworld map if you really want to. I didn't realize just how profoundly clever this mechanic was until I played the game myself. It all starts with the attributes of the characters. This is Leaf and his sister Petal. Leaf is basically just Megaman at home. He can jump, slide, and shoot little pellets. He controls just like Megaman as well, with exceptionally tight and precise movement. Petal is similar in that she can jump and shoot too, but she can actually jump higher than Leaf, and she's got a bee that can shoot anything that gets within its range. So she's just a better Leaf, right? Not quite. She's better at jumping and shooting, but her projectiles don't go as far, and she doesn't have the precision that her brother does. When I first saw this, I was shocked. I knew there was character switching, but I didn't know the movement and physics would change as well. What I love about how they choose to balance these two together is that neither one of them is strictly better than the other at any specific task. Petal would be better for platforming, but she's not as precise. Leaf would be better at shooting, but he lacks both the flexibility and damage of Petal. Together though, they're outstanding. When I fought the first boss of the game, I really struggled since I was trying to use just Leaf or just Petal, but when I finally decided to use both at the same time, I beat the boss on my first attempt. The reason for this is because they cover each other's weaknesses. By consistently switching between the two as the situation demands it, you're able to create an almost hybrid character with the best aspects of both. The third member of the protagonist trio is Thorn. Yes, their names are Petal, Leaf, and Thorn, so I guess this really is a tree. Oh, I'm sorry, I swear that's the last one. If Leaf is Mega Man, then Thorn is Zero. I mean, come on, the sword is even the same. She doesn't have any projectiles at all, but this is okay, since not only does her sword have solid range, but she's also got this quick roll that can be used to dodge attacks or close the gap. Where Thorn really takes things up to an 11 though is with her speed meter. When you land enough sword attacks, you'll fill this meter that'll turn this from the original Mega Man games to Mega Man Zero. This character single-handedly caused me to temporarily forget the switching mechanic existed because I was just having so much fun using her. But despite all of that, she's still not perfect. She, like Leaf and Petal before her, has some shortcomings. Literally. Her lack of range can force her into dangerous positions since she has to get so close to deal damage, and considering there are other melee characters, she's not the only one who struggles with this problem. This is where the second half of switching comes in, the magic weapon system. They deplete this meter up here when you attack with them, but they can be used to perfectly patch the holes in a character's arsenal. For example, Paula is faster than Leaf, but she lacks his range, so if we switch to the boomerang, we can temporarily counteract this shortcoming. Furthermore, you can switch weapons on the fly just like how you can switch characters. Thanks to this, there really doesn't exist a hole in Paula's game. If an enemy is below her, she can drop a tire on them. If they're above, she can throw some stars. And if they're too far, she's got access to weapons like the aforementioned boomerang. Crucially though, remember that this magic weapon system is limited by the magic meter. So while yes, you can patch the holes in a character's arsenal, they really are just that. Patches. The more permanent solution is simply switching to whatever character you feel best fits the situation you're in. The biggest reason this character switching system is so special is the fact that the characters were all so clearly designed with the others in mind. Due to their strengths and perhaps more importantly their weaknesses, they're all able to stand side by side, with each complementing the next instead of overshadowing them. This system only works so well because the game is designed around it. While there are the very occasional obstacles that must be approached by a specific type of character, the overwhelming majority of them can be overcome by anyone you choose. It's in this way that the game will almost never tell you, hey, this is a Thorn obstacle, use Thorn, but will instead say, hey, here are the conditions, who do you feel like you should use? And I think that's the key here. Due to the options presented to you and the ease with which you can alternate between them, you're able to create this jazz-like flow where who you use and when you use them is based entirely on what you feel. However, it isn't just the gameplay. That attention to detail from earlier exists in these characters as well. For example, Leaf is afraid of dogs, and when you run into one in the city, he reacts accordingly, reluctant to even go near it and refusing to pet it. However, if you switch to any other character, they are able to pet the dog. This level of detail absolutely did not need to be in the game, but just like with the captain's figure or the design of the stages, or especially the switching mechanics, they all exist because the developers didn't want to make just another indie platformer. They wanted to create something special, something truly worthwhile, and I think that's exactly what Fallen Leaf is. But on the topic of one-of-a-kind experiences, there's a type of game that's nearly impossible to replicate. It's another Mega Man-like game that captures something I haven't seen in nearly 2 decades. Here's a video on that.